REGENT has just launched their 2026 winter testing campaign. Everything sounds like progress, but rewind a few months. Their full-scale prototype was damaged during hydrofoiling tests. That was barely discussed and quickly moved past. And now, the Seaglider is back. But if you look closely, the flaps on the wing have changed. Welcome back to a new episode of One Wingspan Above, where we discuss anything to do with Ground Effect. My name is Paul Dutch. Today we're looking at the October 2025 test incident, the quiet rebuild, and two key technical questions. Why has the wing changed? And what does it mean for landing without foils? Because this isn't just a story about the crash. It's about what that crash reveals. In October 2025, REGENT's prototype was in the hydrofoil phase, right in the middle of foil and fly. This is one of the most sensitive regimes. Lift is split between foils and wings. Stability margins are tight. Control systems are doing a lot of work. The result? A damaging test incident. Not widely communicated, not deeply explained, and then we move straight into 2026 testing. Fast forward to the 2026 campaign. At first glance, it looks like the same aircraft. But it's not. The flaps now seem to deflect significantly further downward, and there are new structural elements supporting that motion. This is not cosmetic, but it looks like a functional redesign of the wing flaps. Let's break this down. More flap deflection gives you more lift at lower speed. The aircraft can now generate more lift earlier in the takeoff run, which strongly suggests the original configuration might have struggled to unstick from the water cleanly. More pitch authority. Flaps don't just increase lift, they affect pitching moment. More deflection is more control authority. So we have to ask, was pitch control marginal during hydrofoiling? Because that's exactly the kind of issue that can lead to a loss of control event. Higher structural loads. And those added structural elements, they're doing real work. Larger flap angles means larger aerodynamic forces. So this wing is now carrying more load, working harder, and likely operating closer to its limits. Now connect this back to the October incident. A bigger flap system suggests the original wing might not have provided enough lift or enough control margin during the most critical phase. So this isn't just optimization. It's a response to something learned the hard way. Let's shift to a different but tightly connected issue. From the interview with Billy Thalheimer on this channel, he mentions the hydrofoils retract when the craft lands. That means that you don't land on your hydrofoils, but you land directly on the hull. But now we have visual confirmation of how that happens. There's a video from Safelanding YouTube channel showing the mechanism, and it reveals something critical. The hydrofoil retracts inside the cabin, directly behind the cockpit. And this is not just visual speculation. The patent that REGENT have gained supports this exact configuration. From the diagrams in that patent, a central hydrofoil strut is shown, retracting upward into the fuselage structure, with clear integration into the vehicle body. And critically, the system is tied into a control architecture, where the hydrofoil behavior is actively controlled, and it's based on vehicle state and wing-generated forces. The patent describes how the hydrofoil would create negative lift to keep the foils in the water to increase speed to gain enough aerolift from the wing. You see that here in the footage of the quarter-scale model called the Squire. REGENT are now selling this model as a drone-type solution for defense purposes. You see that the craft pops right up the water at the end. The patent describes that the hydrofoils keep the craft in the water to build up aerodynamic lift and then invert the hydrofoil lift to push the hydrofoils out of the water quickly. As a side note, by the way, in that same video from Safelanding, the Seaglider is described as a Type A ground effect craft. Briefly, that means it is restricted to operating within ground effect. It is not designed for sustained out-of-ground effect flight. Since though the Seaglider is essentially a seaplane, aerodynamically speaking, it could fly out of ground effect. The only thing keeping it in ground effect is the computer-controlled flight control system. This aircraft is fundamentally tied to the surface, but only because the computer tells it to. Is this enough to be certified as Type A? We'll find out. Now, we're not guessing anymore. We know that it has a single central strut. It retracts upwards and into the occupied fuselage volume, which means that the foil loads feed directly into the main fuselage structure. That space behind the cockpit, now shared with a large mechanical system. You now have a moving, water-loaded system inside the aircraft. So naturally, what happens if it jams? What happens if it fails to retract fully? And how is the cabin protected? We know that the foils retract before landing, the craft has a high wing loading, and it's a Type A ground effect vehicle. For context, the Seaglider Viceroy has roughly twice the wing loading of the de Havilland Twin Otter on floats. So the landing profile becomes fast approach, no foil support, fully committed to ground effect, and direct hull water contact. That is a tight envelope indeed. And remember the wing redesign. Larger flap deflection means more lift at lower speeds, so those flaps might not just help for takeoff. They may also be critical to reducing landing speed. Because without them, you've got a fast, heavy, surface-bound vehicle touching down directly on water with no hydrofoil assistance. Seaplanes do land on their hulls at high speeds, and they do this quite safely all the time. But they are built for it, and there are generally no hydrofoils sticking out from the hull, even if they are retracted in the Seaglider case. Now what if, during the takeoff retraction, a rogue wave catches a part of the hydrofoil? A later version of the German X114 incorporated retractable hydrofoils as well. These were used to decrease the takeoff length. Unfortunately, the X114 crashed due to failure of one of the hydrofoils caused by a pilot error. It seemed to have caused the water somehow, and the craft was lost as a result. We now have two threads. We have the wing redesign, we have some lift and control challenges during takeoff and transition, the hydrofoil and landing, the high-speed landing constraints without foil support. Together, that means the operating window is very, very tight. To be fair, this is exactly what testing is for. You find problems, you redesign, you improve, but what matters is where the changes are happening. They're happening in lift generation, happening in control authority and transition handling. These are core fundamentals. So what do you think? Is this just normal iteration? Or are we seeing signs that the foil to flight transition and landing are bottlenecks in the Seaglider development? Let me know in the comments. For now, thank you for watching. Keep in the loop by hitting the subscribe button, and we'll see you here for the next episode of One Wingspan Above. Keep skimming.